Welcome to our weekly roundup of the proceedings at the TRRC. I am Mamadou Mbouch. The TRRC has now concluded its second session. 12 witnesses testified on the circumstances surrounding the November 11th, 1994 incident and the death of Ousmane Koro Cisse, the then Minister of Finance. The week under review today is of the week of the 25th, which ended on the 28th of February. The Commission sits 4 days a week. Now, it appears as if barely 4 months into the military takeover, some members of the armed forces began to plot to overthrow the junta. In this week's testimonies, we heard from a witness who participated in that attempt. We also heard from a witness who claimed that he had no knowledge of it, but was nonetheless caught up in the consequences of the botched attempt. We also heard from someone who was with Chairman Jammeh on that fateful night. And finally, we heard from somebody who said that he participated in the killings that followed the foiled attempt. I am joined, as usual, by the usual suspects. Babakar Cisse on my right here, and Ansumana Enso Nyasi on my left. Welcome, gentlemen, to the program.
Thank you so much.
So, 25th it was. Our first witness for this week, rather, was Abduba.
Abduba, yes. Yes,
take us through his testimony.
Yes, Abduba was a lance corporal, in the army, as he said, and then he was one time working in the armory. But then he said between 1992 to 1994, he was moved to State House, and then he was orderly to the then VP, Vice President Sekou Sabali. And then he explained, from like the day 22nd July 1994, he was also privy of what happened at State House, and he explained the circumstances. The first thing he said was when the news of the coup came, or the mutiny, he went to Sekou Sabali straight and told him that there is some kind of commotion going on, and Sekou Sabali said, "Yeah, I'm aware of it, but..."
So on 22nd, he
yes.
came to work.
Yes.
He went to work.
Yes.
And then when he heard that there was a mutiny going on, he went to the boss straight away.
To tell him what's going on, and the boss was like, "Yeah, I knew what was going on." So it wasn't a surprise to him anyway. And then he said, "Bring me the Americans. I'm waiting for them when they come so that we can continue with our meeting." So,
So there was a scheduled meeting
between
the Vice President
meeting.
and
yes,
the
but there was rumors of a coup, but then the VP still want to go ahead with the meeting. It's like nothing was happening at the time. But then that's what happened. And then when Jawara was convinced to join the ship, to join his family, he said he was one of those who participated in carrying those 2 luggages that he brought from England, the previous day. They were not even opened. And then he carried them into the American ambassador's car that was waiting downstairs, Mr. Winter. And then he himself, Mr. Winter and Sadauda, they drove to join the ship.
Yes, and from there they went to Senegal, and then afterwards he came back.
Yes.
So when he came back, what happened?
When he came back, he said he went to Fajara barracks, to resume on duty. And when he got there, he said Dotfal actually accused him of, I think they knew he went with the ship, and Dotfal told him, he said, "You are the one who let Sekou Sabali escape from us." So because of that, and he said he was arrested and actually locked up at the Fajara barracks in a cell for about a week. And
yes, and actually with that accusation that he let Sekou Sabali escape, then it will provoke the question. One wonders whether there was a previous agreement to that effect in the first place, because should he have known that he was supposed to arrest Sekou Sabali or something?
Well, I think he's been just accused because according to his testimony, it's like, the coup also caught him by surprise, because, or else probably if he was part of them, he would not have fled, but he went away. So, but he said he was accused by Dutfal and then, locked up for a week. Yeah. Then after 1 week, he was released. And then when he was released, and then he was, going to guard post to continue on normal duties from place to place. He even mentioned that he even did some guarding at the ex-president's mother's place, Jammeh's mom's place. He said he was even there. Then things carried on until November 9th.
Yes. So what happened November 9th?
Well, he said November 9th he was on duty. Probably he should have been off probably November 10th or 11th, or the day of the planned coup, which is November 11th. yeah, he should have been offed. He shouldn't be working. But then he manipulated the system in a certain way so that he could be working, because he actually, he confessed. He said, yes, he was part of the coup. And he gave reasons for being part of the coup. So that's the reason why he didn't want to take a day off. He wants to be there working. And because if he's off, he's not going to be armed. So to be armed, to have a life, thing on him, rounds on him, he needs to be on duty. So that's why he manipulated the system until November 11th.
Yes, so November 11th, he was there at Fajara Barracks.
Yes.
Yes. So what happened next? He said around midnight, half past midnight, something happened.
Yes, it was at there. He said around midnight, half past. Then, while he was also busy, I think he said he was in charge of, putting together logistics like the guns and the ammunition for the planned coup. And then while he was on that night, around midnight,
yes.
and then 12:30 at night, he said, then they had gunshots. And then that is behind on the Fajara barracks, and it was Sana Sabali and his men that came to attack them. So when that started, obviously, because obviously they were taken by surprise, and he said they started running away, they started fleeing. So him and his few friends, they started running away towards Bakau, and then that's when they made their escape route, from the scene, and went to Manjai, at a hideout at Baji's house, somebody called Baji, and he said they went and stayed in that house.
Landing Baji? Landing Baji's house, escaped, yes. With Landing Baji, somebody called Kabare
and Ture. Yes, they escaped and they were hiding, at that place. But then for some reason, Ture decided to leave the Gambia altogether and then fled to Senegal.
Yes.
And then for him and Kabare and Baji, so they stayed. But then he said Kabare at some point left them there. I said, I think they were inquisitive of what's going on. And Kabare said, let me go and find out what is going on. And then Kabare went to Fajara Barracks to find out what is going on. And then a day after, while they were sleeping, him and his friend, Baji, they were woken up by Peter Singate, yes. And a group of men, yes. So they woke them up and then tied them. He said they used,
the shoelaces,
yes. And tied their legs and hands and then throw them at the back of a truck and then took them to Fajara Barracks.
The Fajara Barracks.
Yeah.
And then what happened there?
At Yundum Barracks, he said he was locked up in a cell. But then he found other detainees there, and then they keep bringing more people. But in the cell, he said one day while they were, the next day while they were having lunch, or dinner, lunch it was, yes. He said Papo Gomez came there with a list, and he started calling the list of soldiers. He said, if I call your name, come out. And he called 8 names, and all of them came out, but they didn't call his name anyway, so he was lucky he remained. And these 8 people, he said, Papo tied them again, their hands, feet, and then threw them at the back of a truck again, and then the truck went away. So he said he didn't know where the truck is going to. But he said a few hours later, the truck came back, and under the neem trees at the barracks, he saw, dead bodies being buried. He said they dug a hole, and then he saw dead bodies been put into that hole, and then and he believed that the 8 soldiers that the list that they called and took away, those are the bodies that were been buried in that hole.
That was the ones that were.
He said he believed that were the bodies.
Yes. So what happened to him afterwards?
Well, afterwards, he said after 3 weeks, he was taken to Mile 2, and at Mile 2, he also explained about the horrible conditions at the prisons, and then also he remembered the coming of Sana Sabali and Sadibu Hydra when they were brought in. He witnessed that. And then he also mentioned about, seeing this electrocution machine passing by and going to that area. And he said he believed that they were electrocuted, which is Sabali and Hydra. So he was with them for 6 months, he said, and then later he was released. When he was released, he was actually dismissed from the army. And then
wasn't he charged?
Pardon?
Wasn't he charged?
Yeah.
He was first of all charged with a...
Well, he said, he was charged with concealing information that he knew about the coup, but he didn't reveal the information. So, but those charges were written in his letter as well. And then he was dismissed, and then that's it. That's the end of him.
So that was it.
Yeah,
so now he lives in the U.S.
Yes,
because he had to give his testimony through Skype.
Yeah, he ran away. He actually also fled the country, and then went to Senegal. From Senegal, he did whatever he has to do, and then he left Senegal for the U.S. That's why he was talking on Skype for the commission. He wasn't there physically. It was,
But here you see, Nyasi, I'll bring you in. You see, the reason why I concentrated more on Babakar was because Babakar covered this particular testimony, this witness's testimony. You see, they alternate. Sumana, it seems as if there's a pattern emerging, and the picture being drawn here is that there was a coup plot, because at some point, we were doubting whether there was such.
Yeah, Excellence Corporal Abdulbah's testimony really was quite an interesting testimony, and for me, the major talking points would be, some of the incidents that he made mention of in his testimony that unfolded on the morning of 22nd of July, which kind of corroborated, some of the accusations that have been leveled against some of the witnesses who testified previously. Regarding the former vice president, that he had knowledge of what was about to happen, or and stuff like that. And also
that is so. But let us be careful. Just in the same way that somebody called him to tell him, perhaps also the vice president sort of knew in a similar way. Somebody called him to tell him. So
yes,
but I understand your point.
Exactly. That it kind of corroborated what other witnesses said previously. And also he also did make mention of Papu Gomez, that he had a list. Remember, some of these witnesses also did say the same thing, and also that some of the officers who were arrested, were killed, after November 11. He also did make mention of that as well. So I think his testimony for a greater chunk of his testimony really revolved around what happened from November 9, 10, and 11. Really, his testimony focused more on the November 11 incident, because he was, like he said, part of it, and really, I think it was a very interesting testimony.
Yes, and
so many talking points.
Yes, and it also appears as if there was really no fighting, in the sense that you had one group shooting at another group. It seems there was no fighting as such. It seems as if there was only one group shooting at another that wasn't really fighting back. What do you think?
Yes, that's why they were caught on surprise.
Yeah.
That's why they fled, because they are planning, they are not ready, and then these people counter them. So obviously they have to flee. So that's why they ran away. But then he also mentioned something, because he confessed, he said, yes, I was part of the coup, I was part of the planning. We know why he didn't want a day off. But also he gave reasons for why he joined in the coup. He said, one, they were arresting ministers, he saw them and he didn't like it. He said they were arresting civilians, he was there, he didn't like it. And he also said promises made by the junta, not fulfilled. Increment of salaries, better conditions of work and all that. He said the junta failed them. So he gave all these reasons for him participating, in the November 11.
Similar thing, we heard the same from Bini Minte, we had the same from Sid Dabo. So even by November, really, things were ominous. Things were really threatening. The sky was overcast, if one can say that. But public perception, quite interesting. We were here then, but public perception had no idea of what was going on behind the scenes.
Yes.
But then the junta had quite a bit of support. Some of us were quite surprised, but most of the people out there supported the junta then. Little did we know.
Yeah, I think for the civilian population, really, these things were not showing. But within the army, especially, in fact, what struck me is the fact that some of the people, who were really part of those who, took part, in the July 22nd coup, were the very ones who were hatching the November 11 plan as well. This I found quite, amazing, because it's like just 4 months after 22nd July, already, there is this perception that
disgruntlement.
There's this disgruntlement within the military, that, they've failed us. They made promises. They're not keeping these promises. And by the look of things are going to get worse, and they decided we will do what we did before. Surprisingly, you have so many lieutenants who were involved. And remember, July 22nd as well, it was led by lieutenants, young lieutenants. And I think these are lessons. There are so many lessons we can really, draw from what happened between July 22nd and November 11.
Absolutely. Now we go to our next witness. Babakar, you covered him as well. He was the army clerk, Abdullah Dabo, wasn't it?
Yes, he was chief clerk at the training school.
The training school.
At the time, the day of November 11, he was there working. Yes. But for him, I characterize him as they said a cat has how many lives? 9 lives. Yeah. Okay, for this man, I think I actually see him in that manner. It's like a man with 9 lives, because he's gone through hell, And then he's gone, I mean, he narrowly escapes death every time it comes closer. So he's really, you know, a survivor. He's a fighter. You know, we've seen that, you know.
Yes.
For him,
yes.
he said he was not part of the coup. He was not part of the planning. He said he was lured into it. And then by who? He said Elef Jammeh. You know, that Elef Jammeh came to him at night and said, Yundum Barracks, accompany me to Yundum Barracks, and with a car. And then he said on their way, at the barracks, Elef went into the armory and collected an AK-47, a weapon. And then he was standing when the moment he noticed
this
that
was on the 11th.
On the night itself.
Yes, the night
11th,
itself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And he said Elef went in and then loaded an AK-47 live rounds and came out. And he said, how comes? You said, let me go with you. And then you took a gun and I don't have a gun. Am I safe in your hands? And then he said, okay, go and take your weapon. And he also went and unloaded his weapon and they drove together on their way, you know, to Yundum Barracks. So for some reason, it's like, according to his explanation, he didn't know what was happening. Yeah. He didn't know about November 11, according to his testimony. But I think by that time, the attacks has already begun.
So they were ambushed? They
were ambushed around Nari, near Yundum. He said they were ambushed and then they started firing at them. And at that point, Elef Jammeh got out of the Land Rover, I think he said they were driving at the time, and then jumped over the airport fence, and then ran away. So for him, probably he didn't know what was going on, and he stayed there. So that's when he was captured by Sana Sabally and Edward Singate and the group of their men who were following them.
Yes, because always the junta leaders always had their orderlies around them and their own little entourage.
Exactly.
So what happened to him when he was overpowered and arrested?
Well, he said he was arrested, and when he was arrested, interestingly, he said they put him, you know, on the back of a truck. But when they put him there inside the truck, that's when he first saw Dot Fall with a broken jaw and Basiru Barrow with a broken neck. And then he mentioned Sonko and Fafanyang, seeing them inside at the back of that truck. So he said, before he would even put at the back of that truck, he said he was tortured, he was beaten, kicked with boots, I mean, everywhere in his body. And if he mentioned someone stabbed him with a knife, I mean, at the back, with a bayonet, with the military knife. Yeah. So then at the back of the truck, he saw these people there. And then at one point it was scary, he said, because Edward Singate said, Sana, get away, let me throw a grenade into this vehicle, let them all die at once. But then for some reason, Sana said, no, don't do it. I think he has his own style of doing things.
Yes, and he said it, according to this witness, he said, no, we will kill them one by one. That was his mercy.
Yes, exactly. So not to kill them
yes, with a grenade, but kill them one by one.
You know, a more painful one probably. So he said, and then from there, then the triangular journey begins. I would call it the triangular journey because from there, mile 2, Fajara, Yundum, it's like a triangle they were going round. So, I mean, when they were taken to, then from there, I think they were looking for a location to keep them, a secure location, so that later on they can come for them. So they took all of them to mile 2 first, that night.
When they were taken to mile 2, he said, I mean, Mudubaji and Babu Kajata were.
He mentioned.
Mile 2.
Yes.
But was it at Yundum? This is the question.
He mentioned seeing Momodu Baji and Babu Kajata at mile 2. He did.
Okay.
Yes, that night. He did mention it. Yeah. Clearly in his testimony.
All right.
Yes, he said he saw them.
Okay, Momodu Baji is the current national security advisor to Barrow.
Yes.
All right. And then where does the story go from there?
Well, from mile 2, they parked them there and then left them there. I think they went on other operations. But later on that night, I think after arresting a few more people, they came and collected them from mile 2 and they took them to Fajara Barracks. So at Fajara Barracks is where, I mean, the worst things started happening. While they were naked, and then he said Sana Sabally was actually in charge. And Sana ordered his men to be ready and he will count, at the count of 3, to open fire on them. But actually he mentioned also on their arrival at Fajara Barracks that the plight of Basiru Barrow and Dot Fall, he mentioned, he said, I mean, even when they stand up, they will fall down because they were weak and tired, you know. Almost at the
he said, for instance, Dot Fall's jaw was hanging and then
speak.
Barrow could hardly move his
neck was actually falling down.
In fact, the phrase he used was, he had a broken neck.
Yes.
That was the phrase he used.
He said he was the one who actually, you know, took him out, carried him out of the truck. For Dota, I think he said they hold the leg and pull him from the truck and his head bang on the floor. So it was very brutal. according to his explanation. But then they packed them up at one place, and then he told Sana said, "I'll count," and upon 3, started firing, and that's what happened. He said at 3 they started, firing bullets at them at random, and then he said some men fell. So, but for him again, he didn't die. I don't know how he managed. Probably he lied on the floor pretending to be dead. But then that's when, after a while, they stopped the firing. Then they put him again. He said he was the one again who carried, Basiru again, and put him, because I think they were telling me Ibarimo selling the motor Santo.
Yes, which was quite interesting. What are they? The Jarankas, those from Jara?
Yes.
Somebody at some point would say something like, "You Jarankas want to become presidents." Well, that's we'll come to that. Let's continue with this for now.
Yes, then they put them at the back of the truck. He said there were 4 dead bodies again at the back of the truck, including himself, Basiru, and Dotfal again. And then they drove them to Yundum Barracks.
Yes.
So when they drove them to Yundum Barracks, that's where, he explained how Basiru and Dot died. According to his testimony, he said when they got there, Alaji Kanye was there, who testified,
Yes, we will come to Kanye, the last witness of the week.
Yes.
We will come to his testimony later.
Yes.
That's it. So what exactly did he say? What did Kanye do?
So he mentioned that when they arrived, he said Kanye took a torchlight and then looked inside at the back of the truck and said, "Oh, some are still alive. These people, all of them are not dead." Then he said, "Give me a pistol."
Yes.
And then he said they gave him a pistol. And then he said, he alleged that Kanye actually shot Basiru in the head. He died. And then Dotfal in the head. He even mentioned before Basiru died, he held his hand and prayed for him, and then Basiru died. So we've seen, anyway, there are conflicting testimonies there, because someone earlier said it was Edward
Singate
who shot Basiru in the head and killed him.
Yes.
And then, he carried on to say that Alaji Kanye did not kill him. He said, Alaji looked at him and said, "Mbading," which is my relative or my family member. And then he got off and went. Then they took him out again and lock him up in a cell. So he also spent like 3 weeks.
Yes, he said 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, 2 to 3 weeks
in that cell.
Yeah, in that cell, before they eventually or finally took him to mile 2, lock him up again. So the same thing continues again. All of them testify to have seen Saribu Haidara and Sana Sabali being brought in. So he was the kind of the guy, who mentioned about clapping for rats at night. He mentioned how, all these rats will come there at night.
But at Yundum, when he was locked up, while in his cell, he said that he could see what was going on, because there was a window in the cell. He could see, what was going on outside. So didn't he say that he saw Jibril say, he was being taken out from the boot of a car. So he saw quite a bit there, didn't he? And then he would also say that at some point he heard the guards saying something like, "Abinala, Abinala, he's coming, Akanale,
yes.
he's coming, he's coming." And then suddenly that person was taken aside and he heard gunshots. And afterwards there was somebody around who said, "EMCC, EMCC, EMCC," as if it was this person who was coming and who was taken to the back and shot.
And shot was
it appears as if that was EMCC.
Yeah.
But here I will come back to you, Ansumana. Quite curious phenomenon here. What he said, what Alaji Kanye referred to him as Mbading.
My relative.
My relative. You see, here we're using all these jovial terms, these pet names, these neighborly concepts, yet we are planning to do the most unspeakable things unto you. It was a complete breakdown of something. What do you think about these things?
Yes.
I'm quite fascinated by it.
He actually, allegedly witnessed it all. As far as the November 11 incident is concerned, he witnessed some of the most gruesome, activities that happened that night and the morning after. I think what I found interesting in his testimony is the manner in which, Edward, Sana, and their orderlies were dealing with these detainees, were dealing with these arrestees. Really, for me, it's like there was no law, right? Personally, I think the lesson we can always draw from this is the law should always be our first port of call. whatever crime you're accused to have committed, I mean, let the law be your first port of call. But it's like they were taking the law into their own hands. And really, of course, coup d'etats anywhere wouldn't be supported, you know, because we know it's illegal, we know it's wrong. But again, like I said initially, the fact that this happened just 4 months after the July 22nd incident, I mean, I am still struggling to understand, you know, what really must have been going on within the armed forces, you know, the disgruntlement of these officers, and in fact the division within the armed forces as well.
And it is surely a dreadful indictment on the junta, the council, the leaders. They in many ways, they all started this. There's something they call priority magic. You see, in dictatorships, when you have the big ogas start committing dreadful things, then you start to breed the mini monsters. The little ones will come and do absolutely brutal things, but all the brutality, really the buck stops with the leadership. What do you make of this? This using pet names, people you just knew, who were neighbors, who were colleagues, who were all these things, and suddenly you flip, you become something else, you become their killer. It is a remarkable lesson. What can one draw from this?
You know the way I see these things? I don't know how, I mean, people will perceive this, but it's like, you know, people blame others for their actions. I've seen that happening a lot here, right? Okay, the guy who broke OJ's eyes said, I was young, 20-something. And he said again, he was influenced by someone, what's his name, Almamo Mane, told him blah, blah, and then he believed in it. And then we've seen, again, even some of these people who are appearing now, saying, I was used, I was influenced because he's my boss, I cannot say no. So I believe that, yes, you know, in the army is obey and complain, you know. But I think at the end of, there was a powerful message at the end. I know we'll come to Kanye, but there was that powerful message at the end where he was advising, I mean, officers, senior officers, don't give, you know, command, you know, unfavorable command or bad commands to the juniors. It doesn't work well because normally juniors have a lot of trust in their leaders. Yeah. They look up to them. So it's a very difficult moment for juniors if your senior started using you or giving you, I mean, instructions that are not good and you cannot say no. But at the same time, how many times are we going to see this kind of games where somebody will do something and said it was that person, it was him, you know? So it's another thing. It's another thing to look at here, Mr. Boch.
Yes. We'll take a short break. Don't move too far from your seats. We'll be right back.
It's happy time. Get 50% off all calls to any network. Enjoy calls every day to any network from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Is it too good to be true? QCell. We innovate, others follow.
Would you like to expand your business or start a new business? We have a solution for you. Step up and take advantage of an opportunity with Q Money. Be a Q Power agent with Q Money and earn income from transaction commissions. As a Q Power agent, you get free training and support, and you could also be an employer. Q Money is a solution to become successful. Be engaged. Be a Q Power agent. For more information, visit qmoney.gm or call 3100-218 or 3333-291. You can also send us an email to newagent@qmoney.gm.
Welcome back to the weekly roundup of the proceedings at the TRRC. Before the break, we talked about the testimonies of Abduba and Abdoulaye Dabo, the two witnesses. Now to our third. Here, we get a different perspective. There, we got it from the perspective of the soldiers, but here was somebody who was with the chairman himself, Chairman Jammeh. Take us through his testimony, Ansumana.
Yeah, Demba Jai was part of President Jawara's, guards at the time, especially on in fact, he traveled with the president. Remember, he went on an overseas trip, and when he returned the following day was when July 22nd happened. And he traveled with the president's team, delegation rather, to the UK, and he fell ill, but he had to join the team again back to Banjul, and he went home only to wake up the following morning, and he was informed of what was happening, that there was a movement of soldiers from the barracks to Banjul. And he also talked about what happened after the coup, that 3 days after he reported to work, and he served as Chief of Staff Office of the then chairman, ex-chairman Jammeh of the AFPRC. And his testimony focused more on what happened, after the coup, the relationship between junta members, council members, as well as some of the things. He talked about the daily life, what daily life really looked like at the time, as far as Jammeh's office was concerned, and the relationship between the council members, like I said earlier, and also, Koro Sise's, assassination as well. So his testimony focused on these three.
Yes, and it was quite interesting that, yes, there's somebody now close to power, which gave him really an invaluable angle, as it were. So we understand that he heard Jammeh say something.
Yes.
This is the first time that something is linked, as it were, to Jammeh.
He said he had Jammeh, he personally had Jammeh, giving command, saying kill them all. And this was when November 11 happened, that the soldiers who were arrested at the time, he was with Jammeh, at his office, when Jammeh was giving this order that all those who are arrested should be killed. And that was the first time he said, throughout his military career, that he had someone say, kill them all.
Yes, and here, isn't it interesting that Abdullah Dabo, the person we were just discussing, whose testimony we were just discussing earlier, said whilst they were at Yundum, at some point, around the same time, I think Demba said this was around 6 a.m.
Yeah.
We know that Dabo, he said around 6 a.m., Sana Sabili received a call where he was saying, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir.
Yes.
And then, according to him, knowing how Sana was, who else could Sana say yes, sir, to?
Yes, I think so it will lead, naturally, it will lead us to Jammeh. That, who else was more senior at the time, if not, the chairman, because Sana, remember, was vice chair of the AFPRC Council. And according to his testimony, he said, from the word go, right after November 11, there was this division within council members. And at some point, he remembered Jammeh calling him into his office. And Edward was there, telling him that give orders to the guards that any council member who comes to the State House or is seen around the State House at 6 p.m., give orders to the guards to shoot and kill.
Yes, and earlier, this was quite interesting. He said earlier, when they first started, they appeared to work collaboratively. Yes. Because whenever the rest of the junta came to see the chairman, there were 4 chairs in there, with the chairman. But then afterwards, he saw it was only this particular incident, it was only Edward and the chairman. So the split appeared to have happened.
Yes, in fact, he delved deep into that. He said Edward and Jammeh were close, and you had Sadibu and Sabali were very, very close as well. And Yankuba, most of the time, is with Edward, but, he was like an outsider. Because remember, we've heard from other witnesses, who said that he was not part of the plan initially, but then he was brought in by Edward. The following day. So most of the time, he's isolated, So regarding the division within the council members, actually, he said it brought about, you can feel it, those of them who were around them, that really something wasn't right. And that Jammeh was always with Edward, in his office. And so when Jammeh gave him this order, that pass these orders on to the guards, that any council member who is seen around or within the State House at 6 p.m. should to kill. He found this very disturbing. And then when he went to the guards, he had to modify the orders. And he said to them, that any council member who comes here after 6 p.m., tell them that the chairman can't see them until the following morning. And then he said he took the initiative, called all council members and informed them of what chairman told him, But he didn't, pass the message to Edward because he was present and he couldn't understand that. And he went as far as saying that the chairman and Edward, were, having a very deep conversation regarding a plan that they were working on. And all he could have, the chairman say was, let's wait until after the naming ceremony.
This was referring, they were alluding to, what they were saying, they were alluding to Sana Sabili. It appears as if they were alluding to that.
Just to Sana and Sadibu. I think Sana's wife delivered around that end.
Yes.
So,
after the naming ceremony.
After the naming ceremony. And then we will see what to do. But at the time, he didn't know what exactly they were talking about. In fact, he said the chairman at the time gave him a lamp, which he gave to the guards, to take to Sana's house, as part of the celebrations marking the birth of Sana's child. But what happened after, really, I find quite striking.
Yes. So, what happened? He would also tell us something about Koro. To me, it was quite, it was a sad moment, because he said he introduced Koro Sise to the chairman, to the council. So.
Yes, he said Koro was his schoolmate and friend, and he knew him to be a very smart and honest guy, and that Jame, of course, approached him several times and said to him that I would need someone, a civilian who really is this smart guy, someone, who we can use as the face of the council to help us in, most of the work that we'll be doing. And he, was the one who introduced Koro to him, and the first time they met, he cannot tell what they discussed because he was not in the meeting. But then Koro came a second time again, and then Jame appointed him, as secretary to cabinet, and then eventually finance minister. And he said Koro was very helpful, in the early days of the AFBRC council. And most of the time when Jame wants to do certain things that Koro feels maybe irrational or not needed, he would caution him and he would tell him, no, this is not what we should be doing. Let us do it this way. And most of the times, it happens when other council members would want him to do it their way. But because Koro would always, try to convince Jame not to do some of these things, people like Edward started developing grudge, against Koro, and which eventually led to his assassination. And he believed, Edward really must have had a hand in it.
Yes, quite interesting that part of his testimony, that Koro somehow provided a kind of rational voice in a mad world, but which also engendered some kind of envious feelings. Particularly, he said in Edward Singate, because Edward wanted to be the closest person to Yaya Jammeh, so anything that came in between, he just didn't like it. But how did he make his connection? There was a time when Yaya was supposed to travel. They went to the airport.
Yes, this was the very day Koro was murdered. He said they went to the airport, and Edward, before Jammeh boarded, the plane, he went to the foot of the aircraft and had this, long conversation with Jammeh. It was a private discussion anyway. And then when Jammeh climbed the stairs, of the aircraft, before he entered, he called Edward again, and Edward went up again. They had this conversation again. It was another long conversation. And then Edward came downstairs, and then he saw Koro join Edward's vehicle, and that was it until when he heard that Koro was assassinated. And this he found very, very hard because he traveled with Jammeh. He was part of his delegation.
And apparently throughout that journey, Jammeh never mentioned
Koro's he said, in fact, even when they came back, Jammeh was not mentioning Koro's name, or he kind of paid no attention to whatever was happening at the time and what people were saying regarding the way Koro died and the circumstances surrounding his assassination. Jammeh never made mention of Koro throughout their trip from Dubai to Jamaica and back to Gambia, and this he also found very, very hard. And he also in his testimony did talk about Jammeh's character at the time, during their time in the army, because remember he said he and Jammeh trained, were part of the same batch. They went to training and they did a lot of things together, and he was very close to Jammeh. They were friends. In fact, they had this joking relationship, and they were very close. So he could not continue his testimony because he was bereaved, that day, and he, was excused by the commissioners, and we expect that he'll appear before the commissioners at a later date.
But do we get an indication of what happened to him afterwards?
He was relieved, from the army and accused of campaigning for the UDP during the 1996 elections. He was reinstated later, and then released again. He had his services terminated, from the army. So since then, he's been living as a private citizen.
Yes, but apparently it wasn't done formally. So apparently he's still claiming that they still owe him his salary.
Yes, that too I found quite interesting, because he said the person who signed his termination letter really is a junior officer, and in the army it's not normal for a junior officer to sign the termination letter of a senior officer, which is quite abnormal. And as far as he's concerned, legally, he's still in the system, and the armed forces or government still owes him his salaries from 2001 to date.
So what they did was, the termination was invalid.
Was invalid, yes.
Quite interesting. Babakar, here we've seen another modified order. We've heard the modified orders before from Suare when he modified the order. So now there was Demba, but in this sense, it is quite funny. The modification in itself, perhaps, we are beginning to see, the modification in itself is not the problem. It is, what do you modify it to? Here, he was told to do something, but he modified the order, some would say for the better. What do you think of?
Yes, he knows the reason why he did that. He was given orders and he modified the orders. But I don't know what would have happened if a council member turned up.
And then
after 6 p.m., what would have happened?
That
then?
will be a moot point.
He could be in trouble for that, because obviously, if these people didn't shoot and kill until the guy reaches Jammeh and an order has been given, it would have been another thing. But also, Mboj, I think when it comes to the behavior of the junta at the time, I think we've seen how envy and grudge has developed through the period which led to an innocent person's death, Koro Sise. He was working, doing his own thing. He didn't apply for a job. And they went for him and said, come. He came. The moment Jammeh saw him, Jammeh liked him and employed him. And then things were working very well, according to the witness. Things were going well because Koro was very intelligent, And then, he said Edward didn't want anybody to come between him and Jammeh. Okay, first we said 4 chairs. Then it was reduced to 2. And then he alleged to have heard that Edward was saying, when are we going to carry out this, this thing? And then Jammeh said, wait until after the naming ceremony. It's like Edward was pushing for something, get rid of Sana and Sadibu. Again, after, in fact, I think it was mentioned that, when it was announced that Sadibu and Sana actually walked into Jammeh's office with a pistol and then wanted to assassinate him.
Yes,
and then
that was what was the official report of what happened then was that, but according to Dembanjai, that didn't happen. That is not true.
He said it never happened. So we've seen how Edward was actually developing, this kind of mentality inside him to be close to Jammeh, and then I think he survived throughout the period, of the junta, and then again the AFPRC, up to APRC, he survived throughout, So could it be that he was actually undermining people, undermining some of the things? Look at how Koro died. They said Edward, Sadibu and Sana, Edward. Again, Koro Sise.
Yes,
Edward.
It is certainly mind-boggling. I really do not know how to get my head around it.
It's
but
like
he seemed to have been the one instigating most of these horror stories that we've been hearing now.
All to be close to Jammeh.
Yes. Now, I think we've done enough with that. Let's move on to Alaji Kanyi, the last witness. Quite explosive stuff here. The first person to confess to having killed.
It was a breathtaking testimony, Of course, when Captain Babukar Ba, confessed that he allegedly broke Oje's eye and participated in his torture several times, I think many Gambians, found that very hard, really very hard to take, and they couldn't understand how, a fellow Gambian would have such a heart to be able to do such things. But then Alaji Kanyi's, a testimony, took everyone by surprise. Here's a witness whose name has been adversely mentioned by multiple witnesses that appeared before commissioners at the TRRC. And the fact that he went as far as confessing to have participated, in the killings of 9 people, really, is quite striking.
Yes, and what I find unsettling here is the fact that Alhaji Kanji was also known as Mofa Kanji.
Mofa.
I mean, you speak Mandinka. I mean, that is unbelievable.
Yes,
Mofa
Kanji,
Kanji.
serial killer.
It's like the killer.
Serial
Yeah, not only serial killer or a killer. Yes, that's what they label him as. But I think he coming out to confess is also good. But Mr. Mboj, on that day, a lot of people were sad. A lot of people cried. I spoke to a few people and they said, I was in my house, I was crying alone. People were crying everywhere when Alhaji started confessing.
I will certainly get to that.
And our office itself, I've seen people crying. I was crying myself.
It seems like the whole nation is having a kind of collective catharsis.
Yes.
We are crying along with them. We are reliving everything as if we are all guilty to some extent.
Yes. Everybody is angry. The whole world is angry. Okay, good to come and confess. That's the reason for the TRRC, you know. But to be honest, it was too brutal. If you look at it, a man comes out and said, I've participated in the killing of 9 people, even an innocent civilian, you know, Koro Sise. So,
but it took courage.
Yes,
let's go ahead. Let's go ahead.
Have to commend him for that.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead
Yes.
with the testimonies. Okay, so where was he on the 11th? Or does his story begin on the 10th? Was it
Well,
on the
he
11th
said,
of November?
he said he woke up, I mean, on the 11th of November to go to work like any other normal day. And but he said, remember, first he said he was part of those soldiers, you know, who were really planning these things. But then when it failed, it didn't happen. It was supposed to happen on the 10th. He went home, slept, woke up the following morning.
Wasn't that the 1994 one? Yes, on the 21st.
Yeah.
Wasn't he?
Yes.
He was
part of it.
He was supposed. Yeah, this was 1994.
And then he woke up the following morning.
Exactly.
And he was the one. In fact, he said he was the one telling Jame and Edward at Union Barracks that, you know what, let's go. I mean, this thing, whether it succeeds or not, we just succeed. We have to go. And he said when they were leaving, they had 2 choices: the graveyard or the State House. All right. And after it succeeded, he was stationed at Banjulding Police Station, where he was in charge of vehicles that they seized at the time, and there he was until he was later posted back to the barracks. And on November 11, he woke up, went to work like any other normal day. He said as soon as he entered the barracks, he used the back gate. You know, he saw there was commotion, and so others were rushing to the armory to, you know, arm themselves. He did the same thing, you know, and he was there. But he said one of his junior officers approached him and said, "I think you should change your uniform, you know, and wear something proper, because if council members, you know, should find you dressing this way, you know, they're going to deal with you."
So they had wanted him to get into his camouflage.
Yes,
Is it the camouflage
exactly.
thing?
So he went in and he had to change dress. He wore the camouflage, and then that was how he came out. And 15 minutes after, council members arrived. Yes, but how he did not, I mean, go into detail as to how he, you know, became a part of it, you know. But from his testimony, he said that it was Edward Singate who called him out, you know, and that was how he also became a part of them and started, you know, or participated rather, in the torturing and killing of.
That's it. So apparently here, when the junta came, you see, he reported to work at 8 o'clock.
At 8 o'clock, yes.
Yes. So the junta were there, and there was a truck. So this is where his testimony and Dabo's testimony would be quite interesting, but because supposedly Dabo was in the truck, wasn't he?
Yes.
So apparently it was Kanji who climbed onto the truck. In fact, when he was doing that, according to Dabo, he had one of his foot on Dabo's chest.
Yes.
He said something like that. Yeah. So when he got onto the truck, there was Dotfal and Basiru Barrow on the floor. What happened there? What did he say?
Well,
this is quite interesting.
Yeah, he said he saw them,
yes,
and their heads were swollen, you know. But then he was given a pistol, you know, shotgun, by one officer, who gave him the pistol to shoot at Fall and Barrow, and then he said when he tried to open fire on them, there were no bullets in the pistol. But this, I mean, would contradict what other witnesses.
Absolutely. So this is it. So to that extent, it was the same thing as what Dabo said.
Yes.
He asked for a pistol.
Yes.
Didn't he? But then this is where their testimonies diverge.
Yes.
So one of them said he shot them. He did, but there were no bullets in the gun. Yeah. Whereas Dabo said there were actually bullets. He killed them.
Yes. What happened was, Dabo said he asked for, the pistol.
Yes, he asked for the
But
pistol.
he said
he was
given the pistol by someone who was in fact junior to him.
Yes.
And that isn't normal. The normal circumstances that wouldn't happen. A junior officer cannot order you to do something. But then he's denied that he killed him. And in fact, he went as far as saying Basiru Barrow, was his relative.
He said from Fajara they
From
killed
Fajara.
4 bodies.
Yes.
From Fajara.
From Fajara.
That 4 bodies exclude. He said those 4 were already dead.
Yeah.
Then he mentioned Basiru and Dot. Okay, the logic behind this is, Mr. Mboj, why would somebody give you a pistol to shoot at a dead body?
Dead body, yeah.
If they were already dead, why? Anyway, we don't know. They may be dead, they may not be dead, we don't know. But also, there is also some conflicting statements there. I think this man, Dabo, said he used a torchlight. Kanye said it was bright day. He doesn't need a torch to look at anything.
Yes, but
So
according to the timings, this must have been around 6 a.m. They said 6, 7 a.m.
In the morning.
And this is what, November.
Yeah.
So what would how would the climate, how would it be like at this period? And these bodies were in a truck, weren't they, in a truck?
Yeah.
And then when Dabo was asked whether it was daylight, he said not quite. It was still quite dusky, if one can call it that. It's still early in the morning, so daylight was was struggling to break, if one can put it that way. So, but that's a moot point.
But it's still unclear now.
It is unclear.
As it stands,
we wouldn't
it's
be
still
able
unclear
to
how Basiru and Dotfal died, because one said this, another one said that.
So we need
obviously
more
we need
testimonies.
more testimonies to be able to put our judgment together and know exactly how it happened.
But there was another one with Koro.
Yes.
His involvement in this. So let's go straight to that very day when Koro was killed. He received a phone call, didn't he, from Edward Singate?
In fact,
call him to his house.
Before Koro, he also did explain how soldiers were arrested and taken to the firing range, how they were killed.
Yes, he participated, in the firing.
And in fact, he went as far as saying all the officers who were present that day opened fire as well. So he wouldn't be able to tell
which particular one killed. So it was always a joint enterprise, it seems.
Yes.
So with Koro particularly?
With Koro, he said he was picked, from his house by Gomez, and Tumbul Tamba. And they went to Jata rather.
Jata.
Yes, and they went to Edward's house. From Edward's house, that was when Edward told him that we have a mission to accomplish, and he made mention of
actually he made it in more graphic terms than that, but we will ignore that.
And then they went to Yanko Bature's house, where Koro was murdered. In fact, he said Edward, asked that they wait for him there. They went to the airport to see off the then chairman.
Yes.
And then they came back, I think an hour after that, and Edward walked in with a civilian. He said at the time, he didn't know it was Koro Sise. It was after he was murdered that he came to know it was Koro Sise.
Yes. And the nature of the killing, once Koro came in, apparently he was led
hit
in there, and apparently it was Edward.
It was
Peter. It was Peter. What he held was what
a
can
baseball
call
bat.
baseball
It couldn't
bat.
have been Edward because he was coming with Edward.
with
So it
Edward.
might be somebody
Peter.
hiding at a corner and then hit him with a pistol.
Pestle. There was a pestle.
I know.
Yes.
And then
So
a
I heard
baseball
someone
bat.
said it's a baseball bat instead of a pistol, but then they said it's a pistol according to his testimony. If he'd said in Mandinka Kuda, which they use. So
he also said that Yankuba Ture was also there, who picked up the firewood and hit him.
Yes.
It was a joint enterprise. Everybody killed him. Viewers, we've come to the end of the weekly roundup, and listeners as well on Q Radio 103.3. There we've heard some very, very gruesome lessons, but still we must keep our calm and be cool, just as what the chair advised on the last day of the testimonies, and was also confirmed by the late council. We must keep our calm, do not interfere with witnesses or testimonies or evidence. Let's just keep our cool. It doesn't matter how much fury this might engender in us, yet we must allow the system to go ahead. We prefer justice to revenge. Thank you very much. Hope you'll join us next week.